Welcome to our virtual All Project seminar. I'm Kath Hare, Head of Grants at the Wildlife Trust and Programme Manager for Our Bright Future. Before we start, I'm just going to do a brief bit of housekeeping. I think you all already are, but please keep yourself on mute unless you're speaking, just to minimise background noise, pets, echoes, all of that stuff. As Nikki said, where possible, please keep your camera on, so it just feels a bit more interactive, obviously unless you're suffering with Wi-Fi issues. However, we are recording the event, so if you don't want to be on screen, then you can turn off your camera. Speakers, we're going to try and keep you to time. We've got quite a lot to get through, so we might need to stop you if you look like you're running over. But for everybody else, what does today have in store? So members of the steering group will be kicking off the presentations with a look back at the last year. The rest of the morning will be all things policy and campaigns. We'll hear from Roberta Antonacci, our Policy and Advocacy Manager. She'll give you an update on our progress towards the 3 asks. We're also going to hear from each of the organisations that are supporting this work in Northern Ireland, Scotland and Wales, followed by some breakout rooms. Then after lunch, our focus moves to youth representation. We're going to hear from Pip, Chair of the Woodcraft Folk, talking about young trustees, and then we're going to hear from the National Lottery Community Fund about their Young People in the Lead initiative. But first of all, we're going to break into small groups for a chat over your morning brew. So just an opportunity for an informal chat. No need for facilitation, just start off by saying how your morning's been. If it's anything like me, it's going to be about breakfast. So we'll bring you back in about 15 minutes.
And we have everybody back again. So back over to Kath.
Excellent. So I'm going to hand over to Peter, Lawrence and Catherine. But before I do that, I'm going to try and just share my screen so they can talk about what's happened last year. I'm having an absolute, I've completely forgotten what I need to press.
Go onto the toolbar at the bottom and you'll see the green share screen button. If you hover over it.
There we go.
Doing well, Kath.
Pressure.
There we go, that's coming up. Yeah, now we've got it.
Fantastic. And then full screen, Kath, if you can.
Here we go. So it's just catching up.
There we are.
Excellent. Can you all see that?
There we go.
I'll go back on mute.
Right. Well, morning, everybody. Hi, I'm Peter Foxall. I'm the chair of the Our Bright Future steering group. I'm also chair of the Wildlife Trust and lots of other things like you know, my core values are all about volunteering, being with people and doing things. And look at that photograph, actually. It's really uplifting, isn't it? I'm sitting here in a very, rainy Devon, and I think in the breakout group just now, we were all having similar weather and things like that. But it's wonderful to be here together today, even though we are all online. And I'm going to be joined for the next, 5-10 minutes by Lawrence and Catherine, and really they are the energy behind the steering group. They're the youth representatives. They keep me in line, help us work out the agenda, and keep us on track and everything like that. So they'll be doing the bulk of this welcome. I just want to start off by really, we need to thank our funders, the National Lottery Community Fund, and Helena Christie and John Rose have actually registered to join us here today. And that will be fantastic for them to celebrate along with us, to hear what's actually happened in the last year. Because by goodness, what a year it's been. I think for those of us who were all in Belfast last year, I think it was raining a bit then, wasn't it? So it's something that sort of, seems to follow us everywhere. But so much has happened, and some real creative innovations within projects has happened. Some projects have had to pause, some staff and volunteers have had to pause as well. So we're all learning new things together. And I think while we're all sitting here, we all probably understand that we're all under different COVID regulations, but here on screen, we're all equal, we're all together, and we will be looking after each other throughout the whole of today. And I think the thing is that we really sort of thank our funders for actually being flexible with project deliverables and delivery dates. And it's meant such a lot to us. It's taken a lot of stress away from that type of thing. But we're going to start off really about celebrating what we've all achieved in the last year, because by goodness, there are some really fantastic stories to tell. And I'm just going to start off with, as a scientist, with some numbers. So Kath's going to forward us onto the numbers bit. And let's just take a minute to look at this, because this is quite overwhelming, really. These are the latest programme figures that take us up to December 2019. So there will be more to add. But look at this, 1,117, 400 young people engaged in a variety of different ways. That is absolutely staggering. But when we break it down into what beneficiaries on Our Bright Future have actually been doing, over 1,000, I think I've done the maths, Kath, it's 1,026 have actually either gone on to start volunteering, or have gone on to be in full-time employment, or to be in apprenticeship schemes and training. That is a really, really big impact. But even more, that makes my heart sing, is that 3 times that, over 3,000 green spaces have been created or improved. And that's a wonderful balance, isn't it? 1,000 people, 3,000 spaces, but then look at the number of qualifications, 6,000 qualifications and awards have been gained. And when we look at that in the round, the depth and breadth of what has been achieved by all of you and supporters and the funders on this programme is really astonishing. And I'm just going to see, but always keep an eye on the chat room, because I can see that Helena has actually popped something into the chat room to say that John Rose has sent his apologies due to something cropping up. Helen, I'm sure that there's always things cropping up for all of us. He's disappointed he cannot attend for all, but hopes to join at some stage during the day. And that's lovely. And Helen, please send our best wishes back to John, and just to say our thanks to you and to him and the funders for everything that we do. So I'm now going to hand over to Catherine. Hello, Catherine. Lovely to hear from you. You're going to show some examples, bring all those stories to life.
Yes. So in July and August last year, National Trust worked with young people to run some workshops about the programme, and ended up taking them to Country File Live on the 1st of August 2019. The workshops were attended by Director Generals and 2 of the directors of the National Trust, who were impressed by the young people's performance. As a result of the event, the National Trust engaged in a series of calls, which began in September 2019, between some of the directors, the Director Generals, and DEFRA, to explore how young people could be given a voice through the environmental sector. Unfortunately, a lot of this work has been put on hold due to furloughing National Trust staff and obviously COVID-19, but will hopefully start up again once everything's back to normal. Kath, we move on? Oh, sorry. On Thursday, 7th of November, it was Outdoor Classroom Day, which was trying to get people to spend an hour outdoors, and we're trying to engage schools and young people within this. And it was a great opportunity for Our Bright Future to showcase the brilliant activities that they were organising outdoors. For example, Growing Confidence, which is basically a hot word, ran a workshop relating to nature building, whereas Tomorrow's Natural Leaders, which is run by the Yorkshire Wildlife Trust, worked with 3 different schools across Yorkshire to help them learn about spending an hour outside. And DEFRA also took part in organising a walk 50 members of staff led by the Ramblers. We show the positive impact about what being outdoors can have on young people and learning in and about nature. Thanks to all the project staff who made this happen for the day and played a key role on the local level. Therefore, I'm now going to hand over to Lawrence.
Hello, I'm Lawrence. I'm also a youth rep for the Growing Confidence project in Shropshire, as well as being a student group youth rep. Okay, so obviously something happened in March, which I shan't dwell on, but it meant that a lot of the a lot of the projects had to either cease activities or rethink what they were doing, and a lot of projects were able to, although a lot of staff got furloughed and redeployed, a lot of the projects were able to move online and deliver some elements of online. As well as this, the Youth Forum we ran a series of youth-led webinars during the lockdown, covering all sorts of subjects that we as a group are passionate about. We had dragonflies and damselflies. We had tips on well-being during lockdown. We had trees and life cycles and identification. We had a webinar on BSL, learning the basics of BSL, and we had a Youth Forum member talking about her apprenticeship experience with the Cornwall Wildlife Trust. And those were all pretty successful. In addition to that, we've also had a couple of webinars with the EA, which are part of a sort of an ongoing program. Can I have the next slide, please, Kath? Okay, so just a few words on the steering group. So Catherine and I both sit on it as youth reps alongside Peter, who chairs it, representatives from each of the 8 consortium organisations on the left there, and Helena, who represents the National Lottery Community Fund. Now, obviously, as with just about everything else, we've had to move our meetings online. We normally meet, what is it, 4 times a year? But yeah, we've had to move meetings online more recently. This is from one of the last face-to-face meetings we were able to have, which was at Stepney City Farm with a lot of goats in East London about 12 months ago, last October. Is there anything I've missed? Oh yes.
No, sorry, Lawrence. I think that's everything, isn't it?
Yep.
Excellent. I will stop sharing. Excellent. And so, oh, we're ahead of time, everybody. So Nikki, do you want to bring us back from the coffee break earlier than planned, or do you want to stick with 10:25?
Should we stick to 10:25 because we're only 4 minutes early according to my screen? So let's say, yeah, if we want to go off on our virtual coffee break, and if we can have you back for 10:25 so that we can make a prompt start for the next session, that would be absolutely fantastic. Okay, so we will see you shortly. Thank you.
Perfect. Welcome back, everyone, and thank you so much for joining us. It's always great to see you, and even if it's online, I could still feel the energy from all of you and all the resilience of the project that you are working on. So I would like to give you a quick update on the policy and campaigns function, and I'm going to share my screen. Just a moment. Okay. Can you let me know if you can see the screen?
Yep, that's fine.
Perfect. Thank you. Okay, so Our Bright Future wants to create a positive change for young people and the environment. And the most exciting part of my work in the last years, one of the most exciting, was to co-create the 3 asks together with the young people involved in Our Bright Future and the youth workers. So now that we have got these 3 asks coming from the young people and from you, like running the projects, I'm really happy to share one piece of information with you now. That it's one good news is that they've been featured in BBC Wildlife magazine. An opinion piece by Paul, a journalist for BBC Wildlife magazine, getting really into the details of what we are asking for, what the young people are asking for. And so it's the October issue. So we are, if you would like to have a look, please see that article is brilliant. But going to the 3 asks, more in particular, starting with ask number 1, I would like to share that we sent the letter to the Education Select Committee to ask for an inquiry into the vital role of outdoor learning in boosting children's attainment, resilience, and well-being. And we made the letter relevant to COVID-19, saying that outdoor learning will be essential, key to keep the children well-being up, and also because of like the effects of outdoor learning on their physical health and on their attainments. The good news is that 32 organizations signed that letter, so it's got a big weight, including all the partners of Our Bright Future, many of Our Bright Future projects, and other external organizations like Teach the Future, that is a youth-led organization. So thank you so much to all of you who support the e-letter, the letter action. Also, the letter got like a good coverage on the media, and I gave an interview to The Independent, so making really strong making the strong case of outdoor learning, to have a more outdoor learning going forward. And the BBC News Round made created a survey for children, asking them if they agree. So, would you like to see your school doing more of outdoor learning? And the good result is that 83% of the children on that survey responded, yes, I enjoy being outside in the fresh air and it helps me enjoy learning more. So good result from that as well. Then for each ask, I'd like to share one action that a project took. So in this case, I would like to say that Elster Wildlife got like an MLA, so a member of Legislative Assembly, to ask a question on our behalf to the Minister of Education. So asking what are the steps to promote outdoor learning? What are the steps that the Minister is taking to promote outdoor learning more? Okay, so going to the other ask. The ask number 2, that is green jobs for young people. I've got two things I would like to share with you. First one is that the report to create a big, that is focusing on making the case that the environmental projects are really supporting the not only addressing not only youth unemployment, but also the nature crisis that we produced is finally out and is available on our website. So thank you so much to all the projects that had an input into this report with your stories, with your case studies, with your data. And now it's there for you to use to shift the agenda on creating more jobs, for more opportunity, career opportunity for young people in the environmental sector. Then we are also undertaking work with the Wildlife and Countryside link on the National Nature Service, because the government is taking some steps to create some initiatives that are creating jobs for young people in the environmental sector, like a Kickstart the Green Challenge Fund. But we know that these are not enough, and we want the government to raise its ambition because, for example, Green Challenge Fund was oversubscribed. Kickstart is short, is 6 months. So we are working with the Wildlife and Countryside Link to develop and promote this initiative called the Nature Service, and we have got we've just finalized a brief describing the initiative that you could use, because it's we have got a few weeks until the announcement by Boris Johnson on the comprehensive spending review. So it's the time now to share these the report and also the brief with your local MPs. In terms of projects activities that were like conducted in support of the ask, I'm really impressed by the Youth Summit and the youth-led research done by Yorkshire Wildlife Trust, Tomorrow Natural Leaders. Really like a youth-led, and so all the there is a brilliant video on YouTube that you could watch about a young person presenting the result of that research. So if we go to then ask number 3, lots happening for this ask as well. Our campaigns officer, Ayla, held a webinar on campaigning in September. And because two areas of focus for this ask is, one is upskilling the young people to learn more how to be to have an influential voice, to make a change, and the other bit is about getting them giving them the opportunity to meet decision makers. So that webinar focused on upskilling the young people on campaigning and giving them a flavor of the current campaigns with the Wildlife Trust. One in particular, the planning campaign, because there is a planning reform, and so they will impact on the places that young people live. And we thought that young people really deserve to know more about it and to have a say in this campaign. Then we are currently doing some work with Environment Agency. As you can see on the right-hand side, we had a couple of webinars, and we are now planning for the last event. These events were a way to give the young people a way into the Environment Agency, to know more about what the Environment Agency works on, but also careers. And the last one, we focus on an opportunity for young people to input into the youth engagement plans of the Environment Agency. And we want to use this as a story then to share with DEFRA, to make a strong case for DEFRA to better engage young people. And I've got a meeting tomorrow with DEFRA to because the activities has been put on hold because of COVID-19. But now that they came back to us to start the conversation and reflect on the steps to take forward in terms of how they could improve youth engagement. So that's promising as well. And then the last but not the least, we are working with the National Lottery Community Fund for an event that's going to happen later on next year. And it's a youth-led event focusing on the crisis, the climate crisis, the COVID-19 crisis, nature crisis, and how the young people want to see their role into addressing this crisis. And it's a youth-led, so we formed a working group with 5 young people, and Joe, the head of Youth Voice, that you will hear more from her later on, and myself are and Ayla are helping the young people, are working with the young people to create these plans for this exciting event. So in terms of project activity I want to share for this ask is My Place. So their youth council met with Kat Smith MP, and she was really supportive of ask number 3, and she agreed to champion young voice in Parliament. So now I would like to hand over to the three policy contractors that are supporting the policy and campaigns work in the developed nations, working with the young people and the projects to make sure that our program reach out across the UK and create a change across the UK. So I will stop sharing. Sorry. And then at the end, we will have questions. I cannot see the button at the button to stop sharing, Nikki. Could you help me?
I can do it for you.
It should be on the bottom of your toolbar at the bottom, Roberta. There we go.
Yeah, I can. Oh, okay. Yeah, I can. It wasn't. Thank you. So now it's like a Ulster Wildlife as the first one, and then we will hear from Youth Camry and the Youth Link Scotland. So Ulster Wildlife, Dawn.
Hello, thanks everyone for asking us to give you this update. This morning it's actually Freya and Kira, who are two of our project members, who are going to do it. It's slightly strange because I'm looking for them among all of these people and I can see that they're here. So I think maybe Kira, are you ready to share your screen? If they could both unmute, that would be good.
Sorry, Dawn, I thought you were sharing it from your screen.
Okay, I'll share them.
Thank you.
Okay. So just give me 1 second. Okay, is that okay? So Kira and Freya, if you just tell me when you need me to.
Yep, just stick me on slide 1, please.
Yes, hold on. There we go.
Okie dokie, and can you make it big for me?
That's what I'm trying to do. I'm trying to get rid of, sorry, I'm trying to get rid of that thing at the side, which is not. Hopefully this will work. Oh, there we go.
Yay, there we go, that's sorted. So I'll kick off, and without sort of just repeating what's already been said, I'll try and link it just mostly to Northern Ireland and Ulster Wildlife. So we are a group of young people. At the moment, we're aged 16 to 25. We have representation from nearly every constituency in Northern Ireland. We range from schools, colleges, universities, other youth groups. We have young parents. We have people who are interested in working in the green sector. Within the campaign we have members of the Young Farmers Association, people from the Grassroots Challenge, and from the Belfast Hills.
Next slide, yeah.
So obviously our campaign is focusing on the 3 asks that we were just discussing, which is to spend more time learning in and about nature, support to get environmental jobs, and the third one about getting young people involved in policy is kind of already a success for us, as there is slowly establishing a youth assembly in Northern Ireland. So our kind of aim with that ask is to figure out how we can be involved and how we can be a kind of important voice within that youth assembly. We've been meeting together since the 23rd of June, so it's still quite early days for our campaign. Yeah, next slide.
So what have we accomplished so far? We've had training with Stratagem NI, and their job is to connect organisations with politics and public policy. During the time spent with Stratagem, we've learned how the Northern Ireland government functions, what the difference between the Assembly and the Executive is, what's a councillor, what's an MLA, an MP, how we can keep tabs on all party groups that MLAs are members of, and how we can then use that to our advantage. And finally, Stratagem taught us how to sell our campaign. And at the end of our training over a few weeks with Stratagem, we had a slight trial run, I guess, with Green Party MLA Malachy O'Hara and Andrew Muir from the Alliance Party.
Then a couple of weeks ago now, we had a meeting with the Minister Edwin Poots at a farm in Glenavy, and it was kind of split into two parts. So the Listen American Young Farmers Club met with him to get their Eco Award, their green flag. It's the first green flag for a young farmers club. And then Kira and I were both there, and we got a tour of the farm to see what they were doing, kind of looked at their hedgerows and things like that, saw like the baby calves, and then we did an activity with the minister. So we carved spatulas from wood, which was really fun. And then we kind of got to ask him some questions about young people and the environment, jobs, the importance of like funding green jobs. And obviously he didn't commit to giving us loads and loads of money for green jobs, but he did he did say he would continue to kind of meet with us, there's me and Kira, and work with us. And he did say he would put us in touch with his other colleagues, Diane Dodds and Peter Weir, and they'll be really important, especially around the education ask. So it was, it was an okay meeting.
Okay, so as I touched on before with the training with Stratagem, they pointed out the importance of developing relationships with the right people. So Robbie Butler is a UUP MLA. He is a really loud voice here in Northern Ireland on the mental health crisis. He is the chair of the all-party group for mental health policy in Northern Ireland. And as I'm sure all of you are aware, there's a wealth of scientific evidence that suggests spending more time outdoors is better for your mental health. So to us, we thought, who a better person to get involved than Robbie Butler. Next slide, please, Dawn. So then the next person we met with was Peter Hall. He is the committee clerk in the Northern Ireland Assembly, and he was really heavily involved with developing the Youth Assembly. He's now let us know that we can use him as a point of contact for the Northern Ireland Assembly, and he's going to keep us in the loop on any recent developments to do with either the Youth Assembly or any other youth issues.
So what do you have planned next? So since the training with Stratagem has ended, we've kind of had those meetings with Robbie Butler and Peter Hall, and we've created kind of working groups based on social media and trying to begin the social media campaign, at least for the group, and continuing those relationships with politicians. We're kind of getting all of our information together and figuring out what we still need to learn, and what we already know, and kind of setting goals for the future within the next 3 months. We're hoping to follow up with Edwin Poots about our meeting with the department ministers, Peter Weir and Diane Dodds, and continue to kind of engage with local schools and media. So that's our plan.
Thank you, both of you. I think they did a really, really good job there. It's impressive. You can see why I didn't speak. So is there anybody have any questions for either Freya, Kira, or myself?
Oh, no, sorry, the question we will take it at the end.
Okay, right.
Yeah, no problem.
That's good. Thank you.
For all the presentation. Thank you so much. Thank you, and brilliant presentation. Thank you for sharing. Okay, so now it's Youth Camry. So Emily, sorry, Kirsty.
Yeah, just share my screen. Can everybody see? Give me a nod or a wave if you can see. Fab. So thank you so much for having us today and for allowing us to give our Wales update. As Roberta said, we're Youth Cymru. Just give you a little bit of information on who's presenting today. So I hope you like our little cartoons of ourselves. But that's me at the top. I'm Kirsty Edwards. My pronouns are she and her. I'm the Projects and Population Coordinator at Youth Cymru and the OBF project lead in Wales. Feel free to reach out on my socials. And Nurashan, do you want to introduce yourself?
Yeah. Hi, everyone. Apologies I joined late. My name is Nurashan. I am a Clydesdale Bank member for Youth Cymru and also a Youth Cymru young trustee as well. There's also my socials if you want to give a follow. But nice to meet everyone.
Thank you. So yeah, Nurashan is a young person within Youth Cymru, and he's going to be helping me present today. So projects in Wales, Youth Cymru supports 5 projects across Wales, and I'll just give you a bit of an update on all of them. So first of all, Down to Earth. So they believe in relationship-centered and meaningful outdoor experiences, having the potential to change people's lives. They do this through innovative and exclusive approaches, such as creating buildings from natural materials, learning and wellbeing programs, and adventure activities based in the Gower. North Wales Wildlife Trust, programme designed to inspire green leaders of tomorrow, providing experiences with nature and offers qualifications to young people, working closely with their youth forums to ensure young people's voices are heard. Uprising Cymru, and I believe that young people are uniquely placed to change the world. Youth leadership can take pressing social changes and encourage positive social change. Young people have the capacity to be powerful change makers and influencers. It's Uprising's mission to support young people unlock their potential. Myself and Nurashan are both also alumni of Uprising Cymru, so we've been in a very fortunate position to be on both sides of the project as young people, and then also kind of on the facilitating side. Friends of the Earth Cymru, so it's dedicated to promoting the environment and promoting the sustainable future of Wales. They're based in Cardiff and they're running several campaigns such as Take Climate Action in Wales, Zero Waste Wales by 2030, Stop Funding Fossil Fuels, Clean Up Our Air, Plastic is Waste, and Save Our Pollinators. And finally, us, Youth Cymru. So we've got kind of 2 hats on during this project, so how supporting the other 5 projects in Wales, but also carrying out work ourselves. So we have 2 young people sitting on Welsh Youth Parliament, and they've been supporting the Littering and Plastic Waste Committee. The report is to be launched this winter, so keep your eyes out. And we're also involved in the Wales Climate Week, which is the 2nd to the 6th of November. So to give a little update on who Youth Cymru are if you haven't heard of us before. So we work across Wales with young people 11 to 25, and we engage with young people in various projects, so everything from mental health to financial capability. And we also have a programme tackling youth loneliness and our Transform group, which is for non-binary and equestrian young people. We also have a youth forum, Clydesdale Bank, which is where Nurashan comes from. So the highlights of Youth Cymru's work with OBF. So looking back, we've done a free Ask workshop with the North Wales Wildlife Trust back in August. We've had a workshop with Ella from the Electoral Commission, the Welcome to Your Vote. So as some of you may be aware, our next SENF elections in Wales is on the 6th of May next year, and it'll be the first time that 16 and 17-year-olds and qualifying foreign nationals can vote in the elections. So Youth Cymru and Clydesdale Bank have been supporting this from the beginning and carry on to do that work to ensuring young people's voices are heard and the political stage. And this fits really nicely with that 3rd ask and ensuring young people's voices are heard. So looking forward to what's happening in the next 6 months, our next workshop is with PSA periods. PSA stands for Positive, Sustainable, Accessible Periods. So they're looking at sustainable period products and how using them is better for yourself and for the environment. So that's at the end of the month. Then we got a workshop around the Free Arts with Uprising, which is at the start of that Wales Climate Week, as I mentioned. And then we're also putting on training going through the winter. So the first training there on the 4th of November, how to create a campaign. The second on the 18th, how to engage with leaders. And the last one, the 2nd of December, how and why you should vote. So again, really focusing on ensuring young people have the skills and tools to access the upcoming elections. And really excitingly, Lysa Bank, which Nurashan will go into more detail about in a moment, are looking to release a manifesto before the upcoming elections in January. And then with OBF, looking at running a youth voice hustings in spring next year. So allowing young people the platform and a safe space to voice what they would like their government to be doing around green economy. Right, over to you, Nurashan.
Thanks, Kirsty. Hi, everyone again. You can see some lovely pictures of Lysa Bank. I do look a bit different from those pictures. It's been a few months, but still recognizable. So yeah, Lysa Bank is Youth Cymru's Young Leaders Panel, open to 13 to 25-year-olds. And I would say Lysa Bank is a place where it helps and supports Youth Cymru carry out its activities, making sure young people are at the heart of anything that they do, especially providing advice, support, and necessary guidance wherever that's needed. We also do actions, training, and run projects on our own, depending on what young people's priorities are. Lysa Bank provide that connection and bridge between Youth Cymru staff and trustees to young people in Wales. And we work on a variety of issues and projects with Youth Cymru to make sure young people are supported, whatever their needs that might be. And obviously, young people, Lysa Bank is an open panel for any 13 to 25-year-old to join. There are layers of involvement. You can be heavily involved and be sitting on the panel and go to every meeting and every training, or you can come to events we run or training and opportunities that you like to get involved in. So there's varied levels of involvement. Obviously, the more experienced and more committed young people who have that time are able to get more involved with Lysa Bank. But yeah, that's a brief overview of Lysa Bank. Thanks, Kirsty. And there's a bit of a description. So as I said, it's a Young Leaders Panel for Wales. And as Kirsty mentioned, for the next year, especially in the last few months, we discussed how young people's priorities are changing. We see, obviously, the devastating impact of the virus, not only on individuals, but the environment and economy as well. And we thought we need to ensure young people's worries and concerns are heard by people in power. And as we see restrictions, well, we did see restrictions lift earlier in a few months, but as we go back and this period of uncertainty continues, we realize the elections are a huge moment, not just for young people, but for everyone. And we wanted to make sure that the next year's elections, young people's voices are at the forefront of anything, as we see the impact of virus, not only on health, and it's not only imminent, but it's a long-term impact as well, job opportunities, mental health, environmental impact. This is long-term consequences, and we need the next government, whoever gets in, to make sure that young people are at the heart of everything that they do. And one of the aims that we want to do is put a manifesto together. This is Lysa Bank's priority in the next few months, speaking to young people across Wales, trying to find out what the big asks are that matters to them. Especially, we've seen that change since March, and going to do that listening again with different youth groups and different young people to put together a manifesto we hope to release in January. And the idea is that young people are not only empowered that their voices and concerns are put together in this manifesto, but also that we arrange hustings in February, March with all the party leaders in Wales to organise their own hustings, because we see that space is typically taken up by older individuals, and young people may not be as heard as much. You might get one odd question from a young person anyway, but we want a fully young people focused one where party leaders can honestly answer their concerns and priorities put forward by them. This is not only to ensure because 16 to 17-year-olds can vote, but we want young people to be involved early on in politics and get early on involved in communities, and the idea that their voice can make a difference and it does matter. And we realize that this is not only a big opportunity to do that, but it is a massive impact as well, whoever comes in next year's elections. But that is our aim for the year, and making sure that we try and get as many to 16 to 17-year-olds to vote as well, using our social media campaign to make sure that we get the messages across that saying your voice does matter, your voice will be represented, and it will be heard by people in power when we organize and put together the manifesto and hustings.
Fabulous. So yeah, thank you, Nourisham, for helping me there, and thank you everyone else for listening.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Yeah, really looking forward to see the manifesto. So now it's like YouthLink Scotland. Emily.
Good morning, everyone.
Yeah.
I feel like we've done a bit of a mini Eurovision here. So yeah, good morning, Our Bright Future. It's Edinburgh calling. Third up on the list of our UK tour. Yes, I want to give a nice overview, and it was really great to hear from both Youth Cymru and Ulster Wildlife. Always really inspiring as well to hear what the other nations are doing. So I work at YouthLink Scotland. We're the national agency for youth work up here. We represent youth work organisations, more than 100 in Scotland, both from the voluntary and statutory sectors. And what we really do is support and champion the youth work sector through a number of means. We have lots of national programs that cover different areas. We run lots of funding streams. We do workforce development. And of course, we challenge local and national government to improve the situation for youth work and young people in Scotland. In Scotland, we have two Our Bright Future projects, so the Centre for Stewardship and Impact Arts. Unfortunately, both of these projects have been really impacted by coronavirus and the lockdown measures and furlough and things like that. But really pleased to report that we've been working with both of those partners to set up an advocacy group of young people. We're still quite small at the moment, and we've really only started. So yeah, really inspiring to hear from Freya, Kira and Nirashan about their work, and I'll certainly be sharing that with our young people who are unfortunately at college today, so couldn't come. But our interest amongst the groups, when we've been talking about the three asks and what they translate to look like in Scotland and what we want to achieve over the next wee while, there was a real interest in the group about the kind of the critical point within education about where you're getting advice for environmental careers. And that was something that the group feels is really lacking, that actually, even if you have the ambition to take on an environmental career, it's really not clear how you would do so, and that the guidance really isn't there. So that's something they're really interested in tackling. And we've also had conversations about the fact that some of them have had really positive outdoor learning experiences in school, and some of them were completely lacking. So talking about having a bit more of a minimum standard so that actually everybody is gaining from that. And they were also really interested in a specific additional subject being introduced into schools, an optional subject on the environment and climate change. And so that's something they would like to pursue as well. So some of the work that we've been doing, I've just divided it up here into different headings, but there's been lots of good policy chat here in Scotland on the environment, on climate action, but a lot of it has missed out young people. So really that's where we've found our role since we kind of took over the contract, is making sure that we're talking to the government about, okay, this sounds like a great program. How are young people involved? What's the role of young people in this? How can youth work support this? So a good example is that there's going to be some community climate action hubs, which sound great, but actually really emphasising how young people and youth work can be involved in those. I also centrally supported Roberta to do a response to the all-party parliamentary group on youth affairs into the economic impact of COVID-19 on young people, and again how environmental jobs, listening to young people, all of the things that we've been talking about are really important and should be considered. And with our membership at YouthLink Scotland, we've run 2 policy seminars, one on the role of young people in a green-blue recovery, and also about taking climate action at home. So thinking differently about if youth work providers are doing remote youth work, digital youth work at the moment, how can they still be encouraging young people to take that climate action? We're also organising hustings up here, so we are working with lots of different partners to co-design with young people hustings specifically on the environment, and again specifically for young people. So some of the partners we have involved are the Scottish Youth Parliament, Keep Scotland Beautiful, Children in Scotland, Young Friends of the Earth Scotland, 2050 Climate Group, the Scottish Youth Climate Strikes, and Teach the Future Scotland. So all of those groups are bringing young people together, and we're going to be planning that hustings, which will again be likely taking place in kind of February, March time before our Parliament elections in May. We actually have our next planning meeting in a couple of weeks. And we've also been meeting centrally with political parties. So far we've met with the SNP, Scottish Labour and Scottish Green Party to shape their election manifestos for the upcoming Scottish Parliament elections in May. So with the election is obviously similar to Wales, a really good opportunity for us to shape what's going to happen in the next parliamentary term. So hopefully it'll have a really long-term impact if we can do that. Yeah, feel free to link up with me as well if you have any other further questions that you think of after this seminar, or you want to kind of keep up with what we're doing. Please do feel free to follow. Thank you very much.
Okay, so thank you everyone. Really a great presentation, lots going on across the UK. So we've got now some time for questions, and then we will have another coffee break. So if you've got any questions for me or for the 3 presenters from the devolved nations, yeah, please share them now, or either sharing it via the chat, or just raising your hand and yeah, just asking your question. Isabel is saying, so inspiring across all 3 devolved nations. Thanks all. Thank you, Isabel. And we had many positive feedback on the activities. Okay, so directed at all the projects, what has been your guys' biggest accomplishment, and what are you most proud of? Who wants to start?
I think for me so far, I'm really proud that we've got our little group together despite all of the tricky situations that we're working in. But I'm really proud and excited to be pushing forward the hustings. I think that's going to be really exciting. We've had hustings for young people in Scotland before, because this is not the first time 16 and 17-year-olds have been able to vote, but I think it'll be the very first one focused on the environment. So I think that's really exciting.
Thank you, Emily.
Yeah, and I'd just like to kind of mirror what Emily's saying there. We're really excited about the manifesto and hustings, and had conversations with the Senedd this week, and they're partnering with us on the upcoming hustings, which is really exciting to have it kind of recognised within Welsh Government. So yeah, excited about that, and that's really a great accomplishment for the young people as well, to be involved in kind of a national campaign.
Thank you.
Shall I?
Yes.
For me, it's seeing the learning that the young people have kind of went through, and also hearing stories of how that learning is then getting moved into other groups. Most of our young people seem to be really active in all sorts of different things in their schools, in the universities, and in like wider political groups as well. And they're taking the learning out to other groups. So I think that's really, really good. And I've kind of enjoyed watching that. So.
Perfect. And yeah, from me, it was like the letter to the Education Select Committee, reaching out to 32 organizations and having like that kind of shared letter action to go with a strong message to the committee asking for more outdoor learning. It was good. Okay, so question for all: is there more than that our organizations can do to support you? So from me, the response is like we have got an interactive policy session later on after the break, really focusing on this aspect, what the projects can do to support like the 3 asks, and we will reflect in group breakout groups on this. But I don't know if you want to add anything specific to the devolved nations. Anyone?
I think in Wales, it would be great just to share the opportunity with young people to get involved and attend the hustings. I can see a couple of Welsh faces in the room. So yeah, any young people that would like to join our group are more than welcome. I'll pop my email address in the chat now. So if anyone wants to talk further. But yeah, spreading the word would be great for us.
Perfect. Okay, so now from Roy, for me, what's the biggest difference between pre-COVID and now in the context of getting policies on the political agenda? Yeah, so like policy advocacy and campaigning, like is really like it takes a lot of face-to-face activities and like in meetings, and so the biggest difference was like to shift to more digital solution, and so that like those meetings that before were face-to-face are now like through Zoom. But it wasn't only kind of a limit, it was also an opportunity, because before those meetings took a lot of traveling time, while now they are like easier to arrange. So funny enough, I thought at the beginning of this period with COVID that things would have been more difficult, but they are not. They like are almost easier, because it's easier to reach to the policy makers in without having the kind of traveling time. Like it's easier to arrange meetings and to get their attention. It's just making the most of that and trying to achieve like the aims like while you are meeting with them, because from the other side, COVID has put a lot of pressure to achieve on policymakers to focus on the agenda, like on. So the other element was like to shift a little bit our asks to make it link them more with the COVID-19. So what we did with the letter, for example, was like that we rewrote the letter to make it more relevant to the pressures that the Department for Education is now experiencing with the COVID, with the pandemic. So yeah, mixed bags, but opportunities and challenges. So question for Kirsty and Nirushan: have you managed to link up with the Future Generations Commissioner at all?
Trying to get to my unmute button. So yeah, Sophie Howe is the Future Generations Commissioner in Wales, and we've been reached out to invite her to our hustings next year. So waiting on that contact to follow. But interestingly, reading their manifesto that was released at the beginning of this week, and seeing quite a lot of green environmental points put into that, which is really inspiring to see. And we were part of that consultation, sharing out that opportunity for young people to be involved in creating that manifesto, which was fabulous.
Yeah, just to echo on Kirsty's point, the manifesto the Future Generations Commissioner released has a lot of really great asks on there, very detailed as well. We're trying to work out how we can incorporate some of the commitment pledges into our manifesto as well, with a more young people's focus. But also, I think on the question on the biggest difference between pre-COVID and now getting policies on the political agenda, I think it's a lot to do with aspirations of young people. I mean, it's very uncertain going forward what the future is going to look like. It's about making sure whoever gets into power next, this generation of young people are not left out, are not dropped down. And I think we need much more commitments, especially from our party leaders, to say, look, we'll resource fund whatever that needs to be done so young people can get higher education, can get those jobs, can get those opportunities. And we make sure that this generation doesn't miss out on those things. Is what we see a lot of time has been spent indoors, and lots of opportunities has gone amiss this year. And we want to make sure next year and the years following that it doesn't continue to happen, and there is some sort of plan going forward. And I would say we really want to echo that in our manifesto. The other thing I would say is the World Wildlife Foundation did a similar hustings a week or two ago with some party leaders, and what they did was they had 3 main asks and released a video with the ask, which was much more impactful. We're thinking of doing the same thing as well. Obviously, theirs was a lot focused on environment, and we'll have a big aspect on that. So it's just making sure we work with the Future Generations Commissioner and partners like the World Wildlife Foundation to think about what asks do we want in our manifesto as well, to mirror similar manifestos in that area as well.
Perfect, thank you. So another question from Emma on how do we measure success? So Kirsty, Emily, Dawn, any from you? And I would say we've got the 3 asks. So from my perspective is like if we get some traction with the policymakers to progress the 3 asks, that is success. But also opening up the space for democracy. So so what you have done with My Place, organizing the event, and having that meeting with Kat Smith is already a success, because that was not happening before. It's happening now. So it's also the process that that it's getting to these 3 asks to be progressed is we have to celebrate when these things happen, because they were not happening before. So yes, and I think that it's important now that we've got these 3 areas of focus. Because before it's such a big area, young people and the environment, but now it's really getting to a good results for each of these. Anything to add from the devolved nations?
Yeah, I think I'd add on to what Roberta was saying. So usually policy influencing is really hard to track, but actually because we've got the 3 asks, and because some of us in the devolved nations have the elections, actually it makes it much easier to have it say, well, actually, did any of these translate into party manifestos? Were those things that were being asked for publicly? Were there questions put into Parliament? What happened as a result of those? And for me, I think as well, kind of echoing what Dawn said, that a big part of the success is also about the young people that are involved in these, and actually what they go on to use that knowledge and training for, and the impact, the wider, broader, long-term impact that might have on their lives.
Yeah. Okay, so we've got 1 minute before the end, like before the coffee break. So question for me, have you linked up with the Teach the Future campaign nationally at all? I noticed you've linked up in Scotland, but the England Westminster campaign seems to be very closely linked with Ask Number 2 and Ask Number 3. Okay, so we link with Ask Number 1. So they are like one of the signatories of our letter action. But as you said, that they link, it links well with Ask Number 2 and 3. So not yet, but there are like lots of opportunities to link. We could link more. For example, like in the way that we are developing the National Nature Service. So we are starting like a youth group to work on this and organize, like we are planning to organize a youth summit later on. So there will be something to involve Teach the Future in. Okay, so we are ready for the coffee break. If you've got any more questions, like you could write them in the chat, and then or like send an email to me, or all like the Devolved Nations policy leads. And so we are getting back to at 11:35. So it's a kind of a 20 minutes break. Enjoy the break, and thank you for listening. Bye-bye, see you later.
I've just started it. There we go.
Perfect. Perfect, thank you. Okay, so we will do now an interactive policy and campaigns session. It's following from like the previous one, in which we shared like some an update on the 3 asks across the UK. It's about asking you, what actions can the individual projects and the Youth Forum members take to support the Our Bright Future asks? So really thinking about your reach as like projects more local to your decision makers, and different actions for the 3 asks. So you will have 30 minutes, and you will start with a round of introductions, and then 30 minutes to focus on each asks, building on like the activities that you already planned in the past, thinking about new creative ways of progressing the 3 asks. There will be a facilitator, and he or she will report back the key points when like the session is finished. And if there are any additional points that are not captured by the facilitators, because like the time is not enough, then you could write the points into the chat. So I think I said everything, Nikki. So
I've just got a couple of points to add. Sorry. So my beautiful spreadsheet where I put everybody into groups and uploaded to Zoom has unfortunately rather failed to work. So I've managed to put most of you in your correct rooms, but some of you I'm going to have to move manually. So please do bear with me. This is the first time that we've done this. I think there's probably been a lot of firsts for people over the last 6 months. And this is our first. But anyway, let's give this a go. So I've just opened all the rooms, and people should now be going, and the rest of you I will move manually.
So let's wait for all to get back.
We're all back. We're all back now.
Okay, perfect. Okay, so now it's the time to for the facilitators to report back 2 points, the key points from like the 3 for each who asks, and then in the chat we could add more if any points are missed. Who would like to start? Or Nikki, have you got a list of the facilitators? Maybe you could.
I have, sorry, I was on mute. I have got a list of facilitators, and I'm also one of them. So I'm happy to do my feedback first, but the facilitators in no particular order are myself, Isla, Isla Guys King, Dawn Patterson, Joe Wyatt, Lydia Allen, Mark Fishpool, and Chris Baker. So so those were the facilitators of our 7 groups. Do you want me to feedback first, Roberta?
Yes, please.
Okay, so we were really lucky in our group actually, because we had 3 young people in our group. So we decided to take advantage of that and pick up on some of their expertise. And we were a little bit naughty because we kind of turned this around on its head when it became clear that the message around the 3 asks was perhaps not as visible as it could be, particularly to young people who are engaged in the project. So we started talking more about how we could actually promote the 3 asks directly with young people that are engaged in Our Bright Future, and then build the momentum towards some concrete actions around that. So some of the things that we then came up with was Amelia referenced that the infographics for the 3 asks are really powerful, and that we should be using those a lot more, particularly on social media. We had another suggestion that from the Our Bright Future team centrally, that we could develop some generic social media posts, but for people to share on every single channel. We talked about the breadth and variety of social media channels and how that can often be confusing, particularly if you're perhaps of a slightly more middle-aged generation like me. It gets incredibly complicated because there are just so many of them. So things that we can kind of splat out. And then the other thing that we came up with, and this is really targeting young people directly, is whether we could have a little bit of a roadshow, if you like. So working directly with projects, but perhaps hosting Zoom calls, if you like, on a regional level, or with project youth forums, for example, for us from the central team to give a bit more of an overview about the programme, but specifically to talk about the 3 asks and really try and publicise that with young people, and also changing the narrative around that slightly and having more of a conversation about the 3 asks. So rather than these are the 3 asks, this is what you need to do, perhaps starting more of a discussion and trying to build in, trying to get some buy-in and awareness around those, because I think it's recognising the difficulties of working in a programme that has so many layers. Obviously, it can be quite difficult to ensure that those messages filter all the way down, but also all the way back up again. So I personally found that incredibly useful, and the insights from the young people who are involved in my session was absolutely fantastic. So I'd like to say a big thank you to them for their contributions as well, because I think I did put them on the spot in a couple of places. So thank you.
Perfect. Thank you, Nikki. Mark Fishpool?
Schoolboy error of not going off mute. Right, so I had a really great group and we came up with lots of things. Under Ask 1, we talked a lot about how we might approach, say, schools and other education establishments directly, that it's not just about a policy change at a national level, that we could actually achieve things locally as well. We also felt that perhaps we could still do, although there's already been some training provided on how to engage, say, with MPs and political structures. Some of us might benefit from some refresher training on that. And we also talked a little bit about the importance of storytelling and ways in which we might capture the stories of young people and the impact that the programs had on their lives. And I'll come back to say a little bit more about that in a minute. Under Ask 2, we had a really interesting discussion. We went right upstream in our discussion. And rather than thinking about the sorts of jobs that people could have, it's about how do we actually engage with young people and with institutions around the opportunities that are there. So, for example, we had one example where one in an organisation in our group was the only environmental organisation that was at a careers fair. So young people weren't even getting the opportunity to see what might be possible. So we need to engage more there. And similarly about how we can perhaps work with schools and other institutions around how we get more of the curriculum delivered through environmental, through the medium of the environment, shall we say, to kind of build in that awareness that it's there as a career option, and you don't have to become an accountant or whatever. And then the third ask, we talked a lot about how we ensure that the voices of less visible young people are heard. Not everybody wants to talk to MPs. And that kind of brought us back. We talked a lot about social media, which most of us, I think it's fair to say, didn't really understand. And also brought us back to storytelling and the opportunities of the way in which we could share stories, perhaps through video or whatever, so that that impact is seen without the young people themselves necessarily having to be there as the voice. And also about identifying what young people's needs were and providing them with the capacity and training so that they can take part in that wider debate and discussion. There you go.
Perfect. Thank you so much. Nikki, you've got the list of facilitators. Could you say the next one?
Oh, do I get the power now? Who should I pick on next? Let's hear from Chris Baker.
Having mute issues there again. Thanks, Nikki. Yeah, so I'll same as Mark, really, I'll kind of try and rattle through the three asks and kind of give a summary of what we discussed. So we were quite fortunate to have Brenda in Cornwall in our group for Ask One. She's been working closely with the beach rangers, and we're saying that she's using her work with them and the resources that have come through the Beach Rangers project to support the compilation of a new foundation degree on learning outside the classroom, sort of an outdoor learning, not just outdoor education, but actually just learning in outdoor environments, regardless of the subject matter. So it was really interesting to hear her thoughts on that and how they're using the resources and actually wanting to retain the resources that they've had through the Beach Ranger project beyond the end of Beach Rangers, because obviously that's going to be finishing. And she highlighted, the importance of all of these materials that have been developed over years, and how really we need to, if we're working with schools and colleges particularly, we need to try and ensure they keep using these resources and can keep using the learning and the expertise that they've had from the projects working with them for so many years to continue to support that message. On Ask Two, we were talking obviously about job opportunities and sort of practical and paid work experience for young people. And Tilly from SOS mentioned that they're hopefully trying to link up with other environmental organisations to apply for the new government Kickstarter scheme that's obviously come about as a result of COVID-19. And I know that across the Wildlife Trust in Wales, we're also looking to be involved with that as well, to offer paid work for young people, not just the government minimum wage, but also pushing for that to meet the living wage as well for young people, so that they're not just getting the minimum wage. And then also Kirsty from Youth Cymru mentioned that they're working to support young people in finding their own funding, because of course the issue of capacity came up in our conversations, as I'm sure they did with all the other groups. A lot of this work to promote the three asks is dependent on the Our Bright Future funding. So we have to think about what can we do to sort of sustain it beyond that. And Kirsty sort of talked about running workshops and training programs for young people so they can actually apply for their own funding perhaps. And mentioned an organisation, Peace First, which Youth Cymru are looking at sort of signposting young people to apply for funding through. And she said that we should kind of promote that in our group today so everyone can look that up. I think there'll be a link to that as well. And then Ask Three, obviously about empowering youth voice. And we had lots of good thoughts on this. So in North Wales, we've recently had a very positive link up with one of our young parliamentary members. We've got a youth parliament here in North Wales. He reached out to us having not heard about our project before. And hopefully now through his connections in the Vale of Clwyd, we're going to be able to really expand on our youth forum through the winter, really kind of making the most of the last 5 months of our project here to get our young people much more politically engaged. He's got a big social media following himself, and he's very environmentally aware and very kind of dynamic and energized for this. So we're quite fortunate that even though we're now operating in this online world, we're still going to be able to hopefully really boost our youth forum and get them a lot more politically engaged over the coming months. And then, so Sarah from the Yorkshire Dales Millennium Trust also talked about how she's been meeting with the Yorkshire Dales Park Authority to discuss having young reps on their board, and even a young representative on their board, or even a young board. And again, that's something that we've got in North Wales now. We've had a young person on our board of trustees. And again, in terms of thinking about sustainability beyond what we've currently got with the Our Bright Future funding, I think as organisations, getting young people on our boards of decision makers is a great way to do that, to hopefully keep promoting youth priorities after Our Bright Future comes to a close.
Thank you, Chris. Nikki.
Do you want another one? Let's go for Lydia.
Hi everyone. In typical Lydia fashion, I break the rules a bit. So I've got a photo of a whiteboard to share with you, so you can see all the notes and what we discussed. And I'll just go over like 2 points. So I hope everyone can see the screen. So a lot of the conversation actually are paralleled with all the stuff that people have just been talking about for other groups as well. So we talked a lot about future jobs, traineeships, internships that different organisations were putting in place over the next few months. So that will really support ours too. But then also building an evidence base around that and showing the impact of that. So policymakers or other organisations who are interested in bringing those internships and traineeships into their own organisation, but they need to sort of talk the board into it, as it were, or maybe senior managers. They could do that with the support of evidence from Our Bright Future. We talked about around the living wage and making sure that we can actually pay young people and how important that is for them, and the barriers that are around internships and traineeships. Myself and Abby actually both were entry-level interns at one stage. So we both got into our little different sectors, both on internships. It was quite interesting. And then we also talked about youth governance structures quite a lot as well. So some people have just been mentioning about young trustees. We were also thinking around in the next 6 months, it'd be great to understand how many Our Bright Future projects have added youth governance structures into their organisation, whether that's a youth forum, a youth trustee, or any way that they make decisions, and what's the impact, and if Our Bright Future was the catalyst for this. Again, it could be good for policy, and it might encourage organisations within our own networks, not even those as part of Our Bright Future, it might encourage them to take that on. And also examples of youth strategy, so then beyond Our Bright Future, it could produce more of an impact. And then we had a discussion around like youth trustees and what's the environment like on a board. Is this a good place for young people to engage? And there's not every organisation is the same, and you'll need to have those conversations internally yourselves and work out the best way of introducing young people to the board, or even the board being introduced to young people. I think it's a bit of a mix. And then we didn't talk around Ask One. I'm not going to lie, it's probably my fault. We rushed it a little bit. But I was saying about how actually outdoor learning has increased generally in schools because of COVID. So I don't know if you guys have been hearing about schools being encouraged to take young people out, because then they're not stuck in like classrooms. And then also at the moment, there's a big sort of timetable issue for schools around outdoor learning, and this will depend completely on the individual school. So I think it might have been Mark, was sort of saying about working with like local schools and having conversations and really discussing where they're at, and that's going to be different for different regions. But yeah, I think that's it. I'm aware of the time, so I'm going to stop sharing.
Perfect. Nikki.
You want to go with the next one? That's
Yes.
fine. And we can probably take, I think it's important that we hear properly from everyone. So we can probably take 5-10 minutes out of our lunch break, if everybody's happy with that as a suggestion. I can see some nodding faces. Yeah, good. Okay, let's run with that. Okay, so Isla, let's go to Isla.
Hello. So I think we spoke about some points a bit similar to some you've mentioned, Nikki, this feeling that there's perhaps a need to kind of raise the profile of the 3 asks a bit amongst project participants, and then get sort of the ball rolling from there, pick up momentum. So Lawrence pointed out that, you know, he and other young people that are engaged with Our Bright Future will have got engaged after those 3 asks were decided. So there's perhaps a need to get a bit more buy-in and make those asks sort of relevant to the young people that have joined since. Lawrence had mentioned that new members are joining the youth forum at the moment, and the induction process that's being put together will obviously cover those asks. So hopefully that will help with that. From the point of view of project staff, there's kind of consensus that it can be difficult to talk about the 3 asks with participants, because, you know, when you're so focused on delivery, and particularly when you've got participants that might perhaps just be engaged over a shorter period. So we spoke a bit about perhaps there's work that projects can do to break down the asks and particularly relate to local context. So similar to what Mark was saying about, you know, we can look to make an impact locally. In terms of engaging decision makers, Lawrence mentioned that, you know, some young people have had bad experiences of actually being ignored when they've tried to reach out to MPs or local representatives. So we spoke about maybe there's some work that projects can do on training to help upskill young people on campaigning, and perhaps projects amongst themselves can share resources, toolkits, etc. that might help with that. But the point was made that obviously it's not just about MPs, there are other stakeholders locally, and so we're thinking about how we can engage with those. And Emily made a good point that obviously local elections, if there are any in your area, it's worth targeting that. And be sure to take things public. So yeah, it can be easy for these decision makers perhaps to ignore, you know, if a letter is sent to them, but if you're engaging them on social media, that's a lot less easy to do. And the importance of when it's possible to do so, to have in-person visits and get that face-to-face interaction, that can really be a bit more impactful. Obviously, we know we've got some great projects that are actively delivering some of the 3 asks on the ground, for example, around outdoor learning. So perhaps case studies can be worked up and shared around that. And Emma also talked us through her experience of setting up a youth council, which was great to hear about. And I'm sure has given some other members of the room who are at an earlier stage of that process some good ideas on how to progress that.
Thank you, Isla. All great points.
Cool, thank you. Dawn, should we hear from Dawn?
Okay, hello. So with Ask One, Charlotte, who was in our group, is going to be building an outdoor classroom. I think it's this week, she said, isn't it? And she was saying that they hope to use that as kind of like a case study and as an example, a good example, and also monitor how the young people who benefit from the outdoor classroom get on as the months go on. So that's actually really good. And George was saying that he has been making packs for schools, like education packs. And then we kind of came up with the issue that during lockdown, there was lots and lots and lots of really good resources created. But people find they maybe saw it. I mean, I know him personally, I would see it on Twitter and you think, oh, there was a really good little video, like it was just perfect, but you can't find it afterwards. You spend a lot of time looking and you can find every video but that one. And a lot of people said that. And I don't know if there's maybe some work to be done in kind of arranging everything that the Wildlife Trusts and the Our Bright Future projects have in kind of making it accessible so that people are not reinventing the wheel, because there seems to be a bit of that happening where people create more and more resources and they are available. So we talked about Ask One, and we talked as well about Outdoor Classroom Day, and hopefully our Bright Future group are going to do an outdoor classroom social media type day, which sort of seems a bit counterintuitive, but it's all we can do in the middle of all this lockdown stuff. But if people maybe amplified each other's, so if we're doing one, then if everybody else could share what we do and then vice versa, that will help to amplify the whole thing. And we talked a little bit about how we're sort of all guilty. Certainly in Northern Ireland, we're guilty of that because we're over here separated by the sea, and we tend to sort of stick local. But it's the same in Wales and the same in Scotland and the same in England. I mean, Cornwall, you know, it's probably the same as Northern Ireland. You sort of feel like you're on the edge and you just sort of do your own thing a little bit. So we talked about how it's really important to kind of try and break out of that and support each other's work to sort of amplify the voice. With Ask Two, I think it was George again said that they're organising a conference, and this sounded really good because we struggle with Ask Two a little bit, and it's really about the material and how we get it across. And he was saying that they're going to be filming lots of young people talking about their experiences. So that I'm kind of looking forward to that. That's going to be a really useful resource for us, because Ask Two would be a place where there doesn't seem to be. I mean, certainly Ask One, there's just so much resources, there's so much research, there's loads. Ask Two is not, there isn't as much really positive sort of resources that you can get. I mean, as our young people keep saying, there's no point in telling us about all this great stuff if we can't even get an unpaid internship. And at the moment, that's the reality for a lot of our young people. You know, and they want, so that would be really good. And I think that would be great to hear that from young people talking about that. So I'm looking forward to that. Charlotte did say, which was really, really nice, that they are going to have 5 paid internships, which is super. And again, that was really good after all the negative stuff about jobs. That was excellent. And someone else said that we need to widen our focus about green jobs and things like that. And they said, what was the quote? Because I wrote it down because it was so good. It was something along the lines of, you know, when the buyer from Primark is doing it as a green job, then we've done it. And I don't know where it came from or anything like that, but you've probably heard it before, but it was very, very good. So, and then we didn't really get to Ask Three very much, so sorry about that. We were more focused on Ask One and Two.
No problem.
No. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for feeding back. Nikki, we have done all the facilities.
No. One more. So last but not least, we need to hear from Joe.
Hello. Yeah, I could be quite brief. There's a lot of crossover with what's been said already. So we started on Ask Two. That seems a really relevant one to a lot of our roles, particularly about getting young people into the sector. Yeah, we did a lot of talking about working with organisations that, you know, the green sector organisations, employers out there, and working with them, talking more about employing young people on the ground, more entry-level jobs. I guess, yeah, that grassroots kind of work, I think, particularly with the nature of a Conservative government, where they are very much put the power into the control into the power of the businesses. So maybe working with businesses more directly might be more fruitful, and kind of selling the advantage of getting in good young people, training them up. Millennium Dale Trust do a very good model of that, and that really should be shared really strongly. But also just the growth of apprenticeships as well. The new Trailblazer stuff is really strong. So promoting that, you know, everyone's playing it. A lot of organisations are playing into that levy, like it or not. So they might as well be using it. So I think we should really be pushing those organisations to make the most of it. They're paying for it. They might as well try and use it. So yeah, just really pushing the advantages of entry-level jobs for people. And I think there was a conversation as well, which was a positive thing, saying that funders used to be a bit funny about entry-level jobs. I think we've experienced at the start, but there seems to be a bit of a change in that. I think they're coming around to the idea of progression, particularly for young people. And I think the Lancashire Wildlife Trust was saying actually a lot of their funding bids include that now, and that seems to be a real positive. So showcasing the fantastic stuff, not only, you know, the work can be done, but also we can develop young people around that work as well. And we talked a little bit about the skills gaps that still need to be looked at a bit more. As I said it a few times, our peak team struggle to recruit anybody. They're crying out for people to be trained up, and at the moment are looking to do apprenticeships, and peak's going to get massive. It's a massive carbon sink. So those kind of opportunities, there are skill gaps that are coming. There's definitely a gap in terms of what's going to be needed in the green sector. So making people aware of that and getting them ahead of the game on that one. Sorry, I talked about tasks too much, as I always do. Then ask one we touched on. I think we said there's a lot of positive things happening out there already. Things like nature-friendly schools kicking off is really good. One thing we did talk about was that we have a lot more success almost away from the curriculum. The curriculum is quite a hard thing to influence, but actually just going in and working with teachers. So we did some stuff around clubs and working around clubs, you know, the wraparound stuff around schools has been really fruitful. Getting those teachers that are keen and engaged, you know, and giving them the skills is really useful because they can, you know, they can bend the curriculum to the way they want outside. And we're also talking about, we all know the massive advantages of working with these young people that don't get along with the classroom situation. And so it's really good to be able to offer schools that alternative place to take, you know, those young people to get outside. So yeah, lots of our discussions were around maybe a little bit away from actually the kind of lobbying and campaigning stuff, but more about working with people on the ground that we all do all day, but making sure we really push out those examples and share those examples and kind of get that groundswell. And then, you know, in some ways we don't have to be the influencers. Teachers at the schools can be the influencers, the businesses can be the influencers, and they can do the thing. And we only just touched on Ask Free, we ran out of time, so I'll leave it there.
Perfect. Thank you so much. Like a very, all great ideas and quite a lot of content coming from the groups. So I think that these will inform then the next steps. We will go through, look at the common themes that are coming out from the discussions. And I think that it's important that we amplify each other. Someone mentioned this idea of supporting each other and not repeating what has already been achieved, but working together on sharing the good stories, also the good things, that the activities that we have done so far, and then also the idea of what we created in terms of the materials that we created to share more evidence. So it's now the time to have a break, and it's lunch, so it will be 3/4 of an hour until 1:30, Nikki, yes?
Yeah, that's correct, yeah.
If there are other points that were not covered because of lack of time, please add them onto the chat, and we will see you back at 1:30. Thank you.
Right, so welcome back everybody. I make it bang on 1:30. I'm desperately looking across the screens for Pip, who's our first speaker this afternoon. Ooh, where are you, Pip? If you're there, can you give me a wave or unmute yourself? I can't see you. Oh yes, now I can see you. Got you, sorry. Well, you can see these just two screens of faces. Fabulous. So obviously this morning focus more around policy, what we've been up to in the devolved nations, and obviously a welcome from Peter. And obviously we've heard from some young people too. So this afternoon, switching the focus more directly to young people themselves, and particularly their role in leadership and governance of organisations. So I'd like to say thank you to both Pip and to Joe Rich, who's speaking later from the National Lottery Community Fund, for giving up their time this afternoon and coming to speak to us. So without further ado, Pip, if you're all ready to go, I shall hand directly over to you.
Thank you. Okay, I'm just going to share the old screen. Hopefully you can all see this.
Yeah, we've got that.
Wonderful. So, hello everyone. I hope you had a lovely lunch in your respective houses and places. My name's Pip. I am the chair of Woodcraft Folk, and I'm going to be talking to you about empowering and engaging young trustees in your organisation. A bit about me. That's a nice photo of me if you can't see me on the little screen in the corner. I'm 24 years old. I have been involved in Woodcraft Folk since I was 6 years old. I have been a trustee for the last 5 years, and I have been chair of Woodcraft Folk for the last 2 years. So this is where I'm coming from, talking to you about how to engage young trustees, and I'm going to talk about how I was engaged as a young trustee and what enabled me to be able to be chair of a national charity. If you are of the type of people who like to Twitter and tweet, there's a Twitter and tweet at the bottom and left there. Should you wish to, feel free. We're going to talk about how to empower young people to become trustees. I'm going to talk about Woodcraft Folk's experience of empowering young people generally, and specifically about engaging young people in its governance. I'm going to talk about our trustees as an organisation, about my experience as a trustee, and about how you can get young people into your boardrooms and how you can make your boardrooms accessible to young people and anyone from a minority group. How you can shape that up and make it a bit more interesting to engage new people. So I'm actually going to stop sharing my screen now and ask you a couple of questions. So I can see all your waving faces. How many of you here have like a youth steering group as part of your organisation in some way? Can you just wave enthusiastically if that is something which you do? I'm going to skip through the screens. It's got some waving, brilliant. Okay, that's good to know, good to know, thank you. How many of you have young trustees, and by young I mean under the age of 25, on your trustee board? Some waving, gonna skip through. Okay, we've got some waves, that's good, and plenty of not waves. Okay, good, that is what I expected. I'll go back to showing my PowerPoint again if I can find it. So, where I'm coming from is Woodcraft Folk, which I'm going to go and explain what we do in a second. We have over 50% of our trustee board has been under the age of 25 for the last 4 years. And before that, it was always under at least 40% of our trustee board were under the age of 25. So I'm going to talk about how we got to being in that position and how we make that work and why that's a really valuable thing for us as an organisation. Who are we? I hope some of you know who we are. If you don't, we are a youth empowerment organisation, a youth-led organisation. We run youth nights across the country. We are 95 years old, and we're founded by Leslie Paul when he was only 19 years old. Youth empowerment runs through everything we do, and it was founded in a similar vein to the Scouting movement, about introducing young people to the outdoors, but rejected the notions that you needed to swear allegiance to Queen and country, that it mattered what gender you were to engage in the outdoors, and that it mattered where you came from to engage in the outdoors. Since then, we have evolved over 95 years to become a national organisation which has 300 local groups which meet every week across the country. For young people aged 3 up to 21. We have 3,000 adult volunteers who help us engage those young people every week. And we also have 6 residential outdoor centres across the country. So they vary from rudimentary barns that you can camp on carpeted floors in West Yorkshire to lovely campsites in the Wye Valley, which you can go and camp at all throughout the year. So those residential centres provide us with a space to engage young people, no matter where they're from, in the outdoors. And you can see on the picture on the right there, that is Lockerbrook, another one of our outdoor education centres in the Peak District above Derwent Reservoir. We also run large camps and outdoor events. So this summer we were meant to be running a project called Common Ground, which was an international camp for 3,000 young people from across the world to join us in learning about international solidarity and working together for over 10 days in Kent. That, for obvious reasons, wasn't able to happen this year, but is going to go ahead in 2022, so long as the world is ironed itself out a little bit by then. We also do international projects, and we are really proud of our international work, working with organisations that are like Woodcraft Folk from around the world. guiding everything that we do are this set of 7 aims and principles. The first one, which you can see at the bottom right as well, underneath our name and logo, is education for social change. We think it's really important to give young people the skills, ideas, and voice to change the world they live in. We also really, truly believe in cooperation. We see ourselves as the UK's youth cooperative movement, and teach young people cooperative skills and the value of working together. We believe in international friendship and international solidarity, and understanding how young people experience the world differently, depending on where they're born, and also working with people from around the world to achieve things together. We believe in children's rights and educating young people on their rights and how they should be able to stand up for their rights. We believe in equality and inclusion, that any young people should be able to engage in all of these aims and principles. We think it's important that young people are educated on the environment and on nature, and they understand the world around them, whether that's about climate change or about their local environment. And we also believe in peace, in promoting international peace and solidarity. And coming back to that first one, education for social change, youth empowerment, and being youth-led and giving young people the skills to lead an organisation, that's why we believe it's so important to have young trustees, and why we put so much effort into making sure our trustee board and our organisation is youth-led. So I hope I don't need to sell the idea of young trustees too much to this group of people. I think you already will know the value of it. But currently in the UK, the stat I found is that 0.5%, 1 in 200 trustees are under the age of 25, which is not very many people. The mean age, I think, was 57 of trustee board members in the country. What is the value in having young trustees? Diverse organisations need diverse boards. And if you are struggling with diversity in your organisation, having a diverse board will make you see the problems and solutions to working towards greater diversity. Young people have different skills and different experiences that can bring a different perspective to a trustee board. For example, in Woodcraft Folk, a lot of the young people who are on the board grew up in the organisation and have a really ingrained sense of how it works and what it should be doing as an organisation. And increased accountability. The more variance, the more diversity you have on your board, the more likely it is that you are not going to make assumptions. You're going to check yourself and be better at governing. Finally, I've included this photo on this slide because that is someone called Carly, who probably about 10 years ago was a trustee of Woodcraft Folk. And in this image is there as just before she got elected to be the CEO of IFM, which is like the international organisation that Woodcraft is part of, so like-minded organisations across the world. The skills that you gain as a trustee are really valuable for employability and gaining young people into other parts of society and having a greater voice elsewhere. Lloyd Russell Moyle, the Labour MP for Brighton Kemp Town, was also chair of Woodcraft Folk about 10 years ago, when I was a teenager. So it clearly works. Being a trustee is a great you gain a great set of skills, and it makes you more employable, which is a really important thing to offer to young people too. So I'm going to talk to you about our trustees then. So we have 19 trustees. Some of them you can see on this lovely picture on the right. That's Elliot there, who is no longer a trustee, but was for the last 2 or 3 years. 11 of our trustees are under 25. And I put that the rest are old. Because I think it's important just to kind of clarify that age bracket. People, I was thinking, should I put something in that says how many people are under 35? I was like, actually, no, this just doesn't matter. At this age, I see myself as almost being old at this point. Like, I'm on the precipice of 25, and I'm sorry, everyone who's older than that, but we're old. Our youngest trustee is 16. and they were 15 when they were elected onto the board. A 15-year-old cannot legally be a director of a company or be a trustee board member. But we think it's really important that if those young people are directly elected onto the board, that we give them the same inclusion into our discussions and into the way we work that you would give any other board member, even if they are not legally able to be responsible for the organisation until they move on to being 16, at which point we'd fill out the relevant paperwork and they would become legally responsible. What do our trustees bring to our organisation? They, as I mentioned before, bring a unique understanding of how Woodcraft Folk works. I grew up in the organisation, have been involved since I was 6. Many other of the young people of our young trustees have also done that, and have a thorough understanding of how things should work, and that allows us to be creative with moving forward strategically as a organisation, which is our main responsibility as a set of trustees. So young people provide a unique insight into how to move forward in the best interests of the organisation. It also showcases youth leadership. So something we think is invaluable. We need to make sure we show that that works at every level of the organisation. So if we believe in empowering young people elsewhere, we also need to empower them when in real power, legally in the organisation. So now I'm going to talk a bit about how we managed to make that possible. So it's all very well that we have those young trustees, but what is it that allowed them to get there? We have quotas for young people at every AGM election for our trustee board. At every AGM, at least 2 under 25s are elected. We think this system works. It's been in place for a very long time now, and it ensures that we always have at least 8 young people on our board, because we also have 4 directly elected young people from the 16 to 20-year-old contingent of our organisation. So all trustees are elected for 2 years. Many more of those young people have stayed on beyond that time. So I'm on my 5th year of being a trustee now, and I've been re-elected multiple times. We also find that although 8 young people on our board are guaranteed to be young, many more young people stand and are elected, hence why we have over 50% of our young people, of our trustee board, being under the age of 25. We think this system works. It ensures that we are youth-led, and it provides different areas of the organisation. It makes sure young people come from different areas of the organisation too, and we have a spread over that 16 to 25-year-old bracket. But that alone isn't enough to empower young people in your organisation or give them the skills which enable them to take that step to stand for election in the first place. We see the process in Woodcraft Folk of becoming a trustee, or not just becoming a trustee, taking on any element of leadership in the organisation as happening much sooner than that. So we believe in empowerment from a young age. We try and have all young people experience being given leadership opportunities and making sure their voice is heard. Whether that is my experience of being a 6-year-old on a walk across the moors in West Yorkshire, and the adults being there in a safeguarding role, but not in a leading the way role. They were letting us decide where we went, how we went there, as long as it was safe. So it's as simple as those kind of experiences to moving forward to things like the picture on the right there is a camp that happened last summer called V Camp. We had 500 13 to 15-year-olds at that event. This is the main marquee. We had a kind of festival-like setup with this big bird thing hanging in the sky. And as part of that event, it was a week-long event, we simulated a kind of border crossing environment where young people from one half of the site were expected to cross into the other half of the site, and vice versa, all managed by a lot of volunteers playing a lot of roles. And then it created a lot of mayhem, to be honest. And then they were asked to discuss what did and didn't work about this process, to talk about blame and not blame, and who was really responsible for the misinformation that happened in this simulated environment. And the young people there got to experience democracy, even though it was a fictitious form of democracy. So that's an experience young people gain in our organisation, of leading the way, of being given leadership opportunities. That camp was also developed by a team of, so it was coordinated by a team of young people aged 20 to 25 who did all the legwork into making it possible. And it was managed by a team of 13 to 15-year-olds, a steering group, which informed everything that happened. They informed the theme for the event, what the workshops were going to be, how it was all going to operate. At every stage they were consulted, almost like a trustee board, with a secondary layer of young people with slightly more experience actually putting this into process, hiring that marquee, I helped put that ridiculous parachute up on those banners and stuff like that. So there's so many layers at which young people were engaged in making sure their voices were heard to make this experience a reality. With our 16 to 20-year-olds, the oldest young people engaged in our organisation, we let them work as autonomously as possible. So they have their own elected committee, they manage their own elections, they have their own bank account, they write their own budgets, and they manage their own events with no adult input beyond the adults within that 16 to 20-year-old bracket. So when I was 18, I was the treasurer for that group, and we had 3 events a year that would bring in thousands of pounds, and managed all of that. And as much as possible, my job now as a trustee is to stay as far away as possible and give them as much real world experience of managing that themselves. So we try and empower young people at every stage of the work we do. And that means that when it comes to it, they are able to stand for trustee and have the skills necessary to then help us lead the organisation from a trustee board perspective. So now I'm going to talk a little bit about, once you've got young people on your board, how you make that work. I know a lot of people have talked when I've mentioned trustee board meetings in the past, they go, oh, that, like, this is almost like the default is boredom, the expectation from a meeting like that. And I would encourage you to try and avoid that as much as possible. I see that as my role as chair is to make sure no one feels bored if they come out of a meeting and they feel like their voice was able to be heard. How do we engage young people in that process? We give them buddies when they become trustees. They work closely with a more experienced trustee that they can ask any questions to at any time. They sit next to them in the meeting and can be guided through anything if it becomes confusing. Openness and honesty at all stages of working together. Any question can be asked. It's never a silly question, and invite these questions as you're going along to make sure people understand what you're talking about. You need to vary the way you deliver meetings. People switch off so easily. Everyone has different learning styles, and this will make meetings more engaging for everyone. Doesn't matter who they are. People will be more engaged and more creative in your decision-making processes if you change the way you ask them to make decisions. So try and create an informal environment. Use breakout rooms, use breakout spaces, have small group discussions as well as large group discussions. Make sure people are talking to different people in the room. Have different people chairing the discussions. You don't want to listen to one person all day. And that opens the doors for young people too, being able to chair situations. So encourage young people to chair parts of the meeting as well as more experienced people chairing perhaps more difficult parts of the meetings. And use more inclusive ways of working. So I've written hand signals here. Boardrooms are designed to help old white men. That's the situations that's who it benefits, isn't it? That you get to talk, if you butt in and you manage to keep going, that benefits you in that room. You need to create a space that doesn't do that. And that's having clear processes for how people engage in the conversation. Maybe that's just asking every single person in the room what they think in turn. And giving them an opportunity to speak. We use things called hand signals. So rather than, if you agree with someone, just give them some jazz hands. And you can see that everyone agrees with what you're saying without it having to interrupt the meeting in any way. Thank you, get some jazz hands back, that's nice. We also use, if you have a proposal, you do a P. And we have a whole set of hand signals basically that we use to make this meeting have less interruptions and you can communicate your points more clearly. I'm happy to share those with someone. I'm not going to go through them all now if people want to know. Make sure there's time for everyone to input into decisions. Like if you rush things, people get left out. The young people are going to get left out. And make sure there's space for feedback and make sure you're open to the idea of doing something differently. Because if you're not, you won't be able to engage new people in that environment. Finally, I'm going to talk about shadowing. So this is something we do to, once those young people engaged as trustees, to get them into perhaps taking on more responsibility in that trustee environment. So I see this as being committed to the development of your young trustees. If you think that they should be able to continue to gain more skills beyond that, you need to allow them to go beyond the skills of just being a trustee and have specific roles in that and take those on. How can you do that? Allow them to shadow a role, work alongside someone, be flexible. Maybe two people can do a role together, an old person with one set of skills and a young person with a different set of skills. I was shadow chair. So I shadowed the chair for a year. I was involved in the difficult decisions that chair had to make. I went along to meetings and I also shared the chairing of meetings with them. And that allowed me to then become the chair later on. So I'd encourage that. Think flexibly, think open-mindedly about any of the roles you have on your trustee board. I'd also encourage you to think, so for example, the chair of a trustee board traditionally line manages the CEO. It's not very reasonable to expect a CEO to be line managed by someone like myself who has very little line management experience, especially when I started when I was 22 when I became the chair. So we created a separate role that just line managed the CEO, that created that professional support required from day-to-day working, whilst also making sure the organisation was led by a young person. You can change things to make things work and be open-minded about that. Finally, before I open up some questions, I'm going to talk about the challenges of working online and working in a coronavirus, slightly hectic world that we live in. We have found this challenging. I have found this challenging as a chair of a trustee board to make sure that in a fast-paced time where you're making quite big and difficult decisions, we've rewritten the budget for our organisation 3 times already this year. You need to make sure there's still space to engage young people in that process. And working online can be difficult. So Zoom, for example, has breakout rooms. They are really useful for doing things. We've started introducing soft starts to meetings so that you can still have that informal space for people to ask questions, to say hello, to have a coffee, before you're stuck in a difficult boardroom situation. And maybe you need to have more meetings. You need to meet more regularly to mean that you have time to make all the decisions you have to make without everyone getting Zoom fatigue, which I know the whole world is getting at the moment as we all zip from one Zoom meeting to the next. And finally, think about how young people communicate. Sometimes you have a young trustee member and you send them off an email and you're like, why haven't they responded to me? This isn't good enough, like 3 days later. And many of us have been drilled in email etiquette over many years of working, that being the only way we work with one another. But young people, you can't expect young people to have those same expectations. They're not used to working through emails, and think flexibly about how you work with young people. Sometimes a text message is just as good as an email and they'll respond in a completely different way. So work creatively with the people you're working with. And that's pretty much everything. Finally, I'd like to just say you all have the power to do this. Like, you can make this change, and all you've got to do is believe in young people and kind of give them the chance to prove themselves. I've always found that they'd always do. So take the risk if you're not already tempted to. Thank you. Has anyone got any questions?
We have got a few more minutes actually if people have any questions. If you either just want to unmute yourself and just ask the question of Pip directly, because I'm struggling to see if people have got their hands up or not. Or if not, do feel free to punch one into the chat and I can read it out for you.
I have a question. Start things off.
Yeah.
So I wanted to say sort of big thank you to Pip. I think that was a really interesting presentation, and I guess I'm somebody who you would class as, you know, this young person because I'm 23, and quite honestly, in the past few days, that's when I've really sort of become aware of being a trustee is something that young people can do. I really, I'm afraid, was part of seeing it as this stereotype of being a trustee. You sort of have to be a bit older and have many years of experience to actually also way up to becoming a trustee. So I appreciate terms of that is I have sort of applied for something so if I'm successful, perhaps that's something that I'll find out quite soon. But I wondered in terms of how do you go about perhaps finding out if there are any positions available for different charities? I know there's perhaps you can go to the charities like websites directly, but is there perhaps more of a like perhaps a general website that lists the different positions?
That is an excellent question and one I don't actually have an answer to. I don't know if there's somewhere that lists all the trustee vacancies. If there's an organisation you're particularly interested in being a trustee for, I would recommend just approaching them directly. Be like, I'm a young person, I'm interested in being a trustee. Do you have any young trustees? I think I could offer this. And I think, be aware of the amount of things you do have to offer, because even though you don't have the experience of, I don't know, financial management of a large organization, for example, like there's so many things which are vital right now, especially as the world is working online, such as how to engage communities online, that young people have a far better experience of than anyone in their 50s. So I don't actually have and someone here might have an answer for that one. If you do, shout out. But that would be sensible, wouldn't it, if that existed?
There is a magazine called, well, it's just an email subscription magazine called The Third Sector. So that does have a lot of the trustee positions in there. So it's worth looking out for that. And then the government have also got a website for government trustee positions. And I think the Heritage Lottery Fund do have a page around their trustees as well, if anybody's sort of interested in the heritage sector. But the third sector is a really interesting one, I would say.
Okay, great. Thank you so much for both of your responses. That's really useful.
Thanks.
Thank you. Thanks for the questions. Pip, thank you so much for talking. I'm afraid we haven't got time for any more questions because we're about to move on to our last session of today. But thank you again, Pip, for coming along and talking. The comments in the chat are saying how inspiring and informative that talk was, and there's quite a few questions in there for you as well, Pip, so do feel free to respond to those directly in the chat so that we don't lose them. In the meantime, we need to move on to our last speaker of the day, actually. So I'd like to welcome Joe Rich from the National Lottery Communities Fund, who's kindly given up her time this afternoon to come and talk to us about the Young People in the Lead initiative. So Joe, over to you.
Good afternoon, everyone. Lovely to see so many faces. Thank you for having me here today. So yeah, I am from the Tongue Twister, which is the National Lottery Community Fund. I am their head of Youth Voice. I have been there a whole year now. and obviously, like all of us, half of that has been through a global pandemic. So an interesting year to say the least, but some great achievements that I was really excited to share with you today and answer any questions around kind of youth participation, youth involvement. My background is 15 years in youth participation through different sectors. So working at a housing association before, working at organisations like Prince's Trust, Live Unlimited, all developing kind of youth strategies of involving young people. But how I do all of this, because I am sadly not young anymore, is with a group of young people, and that's exactly what I've done here at the lottery as well. And we have taken on an incredible bunch of young people through our funded programs called the Young People in the Lead. So that's what I'm here mainly to talk about today. Just to give you a bit of background, why did the lottery decide to kind of invest in a role and invest in this as a way forward? So hopefully all of you would have heard of us, but we are also the biggest funder of children and youth activity. So we give over 200 million a year to young people activity and fund over 6,000 community projects, which is fantastic, and some incredible organisations out there, including this, which is brilliant to be here talking today. So yeah, so there's a lot of funding obviously that goes out to young people projects. We have got a strengths-based approach in our strategy. It's about putting people in the lead. It's really important to us, so we should also put young people in the lead. We were looking at how funding was going to violence affecting young people, mental health, but not always having young people in the room, and that's why they invested in my role to bring that voice to the fund. So what we're doing and what we've tried to do over this year and for the future is look at our grant making processes, look at every kind of touch point of applications, for example, and where can we add genuine youth voice. But also it's about kind of living and breathing what we're doing. So for example, what my role is doing here and also in past roles is looking at how we represent our young people within the fund. Are we an attractive employer? Are we attractive, are we visually represented in our governance, etc. So that's been a big part of the work as well. So I always say, like, young people are the experts. They're the only ones that have walked their shoes and in their lives, and that's why they should be the ones kind of behind the scenes and behind all the decision making. And that's what we've tried to install here with the Young People in the Lead. So how have we done this so far? We recruited some incredible young people, which one of them is here today. So I'm gonna give her a big shout out in a minute. Just to say hi to you all, and she can answer the questions with me, because she's a great advocate, not only of OBF, but also of the Young People in Lead. But what we did was we recruited from our funded programs. It was really important that the young people had been through the journey through one of our programs, and that will become apparent as the reason why in a minute. They represent our communities. Young people are not only young, they also live in the communities that we all serve, and that is why it is important that they're here, and they're also the future. That sounds so corny, but actually it's so true. This is their future. We're designing the future for them, and actually they should be a part of those discussions, and that's what all young people have always told me, and they want to be there. They have every right to be there, and they bring such incredible fresh eyes and fresh solutions to a lot of the problems we all face, actually, but especially where our funding goes as well. How we have done this in the fund. We were supposed to be meeting every month, but within a couple of weeks of lockdown, bless them, they said, we want to be more involved, we want a purpose. So we've actually met weekly. They've been my absolute rays of sunshine throughout this time. So yeah, a big thank you to them for getting me through this, I think. But yeah, and some of the successes, so not only have they grown incredibly, I mean, it's only actually 6 months practically that we've worked together. Not only have they all grown already, but the kind of positions of influence and the sessions that they've run, the ripple effect of everything they've done is just incredible. So they now sit on, not only do they help us at the fund to develop sessions for funding staff, kind of impart better knowledge on funding staff of what to look for in quality youth programmes, for example. But it's also about kind of influencing others to take on young people in the lead, some kind of advisors, as it were. So they've run sessions for our staff, which there's over 400 or 500 of, but also for other funder staff, because I've led a collaboration throughout COVID with children in need and looking at the youth voice bit of that. So we've been involved in them. So we've reached 300 external stakeholders as well as our own funding staff in 3 different sessions, but they're building all the time. That we've got some more events coming up, but one's been around needs of young people coming out of COVID, one's been around the important what to look for in a quality youth project, and one is the importance of youth voice, which I've got a few slides to share with you if I've got time in a minute. The positions of influence that they sit on are, they now sit on our 2 sit on our England committee, 1 sit on our board, which for those of you that know the fund, it's an incredible step forward for us, and really proud of the young people that are now sitting in all those positions of influence. 1 sits on the DCMS steering group, 1 on the I Will Leadership Board, and 1 on our new Phoenix Fund as a decision maker. So some incredible reaches. Not only are they our young people in the lead, our advisors at the fund, but they also, as a result, have gone on to do these roles additional as well. They're supported by another organisation, they're supported by myself as a mentor and to lead the piece of work, but also it's always important to have that wraparound support for them as well. And that is done through an external agency provides them with like public speaking skills and networking skills and all sorts of things like that. So that's kind of a bit about what they've been doing. We've got some slides to share with you. I might just shout out Amelia now, if she doesn't mind, because I'm putting her on the spot a bit, but just because I know she's involved with OBF as well, so I just thought it'd be really great to introduce you to Amelia. So hi Millie, how are you?
Hi, good. How are you?
Thank you. I hope you enjoy today. I don't know whether if you're comfortable, if you want to share, yeah, anything that you've experienced over the last 6 months and what you've enjoyed and the session that you've been a part of with the Quality Youth Programme.
Well, YPIL, so that's what we call it, Young People in the Lead. YPIL is been really amazing. The group, I've never clicked with the group as well as I have with YPIL. We're just, I think it's also part of COVID, like Joe said, we're having meetings every week. We've just gone back to I think every month now, haven't we, Joe? But those weekly meetings, they're what got me through. So the first 3 months of COVID, I sort of dropped off the face of the earth, and then Joe called me like, I really think you need to join these meetings. So I joined back in and got my confidence back and actually learned how to use Zoom and Teams, because no one really teaches you that. You just expected to know. And it's been amazing. We did an amazing workshop the other day, which was a skill share. And so it's where you just had like 10 minutes to talk about any skills that you have. And there was an amazing one from a girl called Lauren who learned sign language. And I actually been doing some work with her to learn some sign language, which was amazing. It's just been a great program to be part of, because like the staff really want to hear your opinions and they really want to listen to you. And the CEO Dawn has come to a few of our meetings, which has just been amazing because she's really engaged as well. And I don't know whether it's Zoom that's made us all a bit more informal, but I feel like we've all chilled out because we've chatted so much. And it's like you were saying, Pip, how it becomes more informal and less of a boardroom sense, and that's really been one of the highlights of this board for me. So I hope that's okay, Joe.
Yeah, no, that's brilliant. When I found out Amelia was on the call, I was like, I need to give you a shout out. So yeah, that's thank you so much. That's great. So yeah, so we've obviously achieved quite a lot. It has only practically been 6 months. They're with us until the end of March, and hopefully longer in different roles in the future. But one of the sessions that they created, which I thought might be useful today, was Importance of Youth Voice. Now you can find all of their sessions on our YouTube channel, and I'll share all this after. But I thought this might be quite a nice one to go through quick with you now. And it's some top tips of I don't use Zoom usually. We're on Teams, but can people see this? So this was that. Yeah, is that a yes, Nikki?
Yeah, we can see that.
Awesome. So this is, so the young people in the lead put this together. It's about the 5, it's 10 top tips around what's the importance of youth voice. And then they split it into 2 slides, which is the 5 ways to be. So be transparent and set clear expectations with young people, be accessible and provide a safe space, be interactive and fun, be together with young people in design and evaluation of projects, and be diverse and inclusive. And what they've done in one of these sessions as well, they've actually given examples of projects that they've been a part of, which is given you know, real kind of clear examples of what's behind each one, which is really nice, and what our funding staff in particular have found really useful when assessing projects and things. And if you're developing your own project style and that, it may be worth looking at that. So yeah, so they're the 5 ways to be, and then hopefully you can see this 5 things to provide, and this one I think is really important. It's they did this, and I love the way they presented it. So it's like the journey that you go through, to always have tailored mentors, like role models. So that could be other young people, or, you know, staff, or anyone, but have those role models in there. Training is always really important. So it doesn't always have to be accredited actually, but useful training that they've asked for. So ask the young people, what is it they would like? In a previous role, they wanted first aid training. So that's what we embedded as part of the programme. Opportunities, these are based on their individual goals and ambitions. What's really important is they're not a homogeneous group, as adults aren't, so neither are young people. So, you know, ask them, what are their goals for the future? I know we've got one young lady in YP at the moment, she's really keen to get into politics, so it's about kind of, you know, making sure she's given the right opportunities for that. You know, obviously Amelia's environment, so we're linking her with doing an environment event in the future, that kind of thing. So make sure the opportunities are relevant for them. Always include rewards, and what's really interesting is I think this can be always a tricky conversation, I suppose, to have with people is, you know, should they be paid or not paid? My line of work before has always been with young people that are furthest from the labour market, and not necessarily, not with YPIL. In my past role, it was with housing, so it was young people that were in their first properties, for example, often care leavers. So for them, actually, monetary reward didn't help them. It doesn't help universal credit, and those that work with young people in those spaces will know that. So it's about thinking about what is it they want for their journey. So for them, it was maybe some technology. So if you can you know, if you're lucky enough to invest in some tablets for them or something like that, that was one route we've gone down before. But equally, they may want vouchers, they may want just food, they may want, but sometimes it's just recognition and being given like valuable opportunities that they can then use in the future. And then finally, feedback. And actually, this is one of the points that comes back so strongly time and time again around when I've worked with young people, it's please give us feedback on where all that information has gone. So when you've asked us our opinions on something, or when you've asked us our view on something, please let us know where that information's gone. What has it changed? What, you know, what have we been a part of? And that yeah, that for me is probably, if you can't remember all 10 points, definitely remember that one, because that's where they feel part of that change. And then what better way to end the session, hopefully you can see this, is they've written a couple of poems, but this is just an extract for one of them, which I think is quite poignant. This is the whole group, so lovely Amelia's there in the middle. But the absence of our voices makes no sense. Our voice is power, and we don't mean to cause offence. Our voice is our power, we are tomorrow's leaders, and this is our hour. So that was Young People in the Lead, and my name's Jo Rich. Please ask any questions while I figure out how I stop sharing.
And again, if anyone has got any questions, do feel free to unmute and ask Jo directly, or feel free to type them in the chat and I can ask them for you.
We've got a few hands up, I can see.
Well, we've got, I think they're rounds of applause.
Oh,
So thank you for a brilliant talk, which I'll echo that. So yeah, a huge thanks to you, Jo, and to Amelia. It was a fascinating talk and really interesting to hear about everything that you've been doing over the last 6 months. I'll just scroll through the screens to see if I have missed anybody.
Just while I remember, in answer to the young lady previously, the young trustee movement's been set up. That is all about getting young people on trustees, and they've got great support. So the young people that are on our England committee and board, we've partnered them up with some peer mentors. There's also training resources, and what I think is brilliant, they're also developing an onboarding process for the actual boards. So definitely worth a look. That's Young Trustee Movement.
Fabulous. Thank you so much, Jo. We don't seem to have any questions, or at least I'm not hearing from anybody at the moment. But if you do have any questions and you think of them afterwards, please do feel free to send them through to us at Our Bright Future, and we can definitely pass them on to Jo or to Pip or whoever, and get some answers back for you. So thank you, Jo. Thank you, Pip. What a fabulous afternoon of talks. I think we've been really privileged to hear from both of you. It's been really interesting and hugely informative. I think it's given everyone a lot to think about. So we're leading up now to the close of the day. So I will hand back over to Kath in just a second. But just to let you know, we have been recording the whole seminar. And we will make that available on the green room, which is, for those of you who aren't aware, that's the Our Bright Future online community. I have also taken a couple of pics just of everybody on screen. If there's anybody that's not happy about me doing that, or about me possibly tweeting it, then just email me or message me, and I'll make sure that I don't do that. But it seemed like too good an opportunity to miss. Otherwise, that's it from me. I will hand over to Kath to close us off.
Thanks, Nikki. And in true fashion, Nikki's stolen some of the things I was going to say, so my speech will be shorter like this morning. So thanks everyone for joining us today. It's been really nice to see so many of you. It feels like ages, and it has been ages, hasn't it? Extra thanks to Pip and Jo for their inspiring talks this afternoon. Thanks to everyone from Ulster Wildlife, Youth Cymru, Youth Link Scotland for giving us updates from your patches, and for all the support that you've given us for the team. Thanks to the steering group and evaluation panel for their ongoing support and attending our meetings. Thanks to Helena and John Rose from the National Lottery Community Fund for their support, championing of the programme. And finally, Nikki, thank you for making this experience go so smoothly. First online conference for Our Bright Future. So as Nikki said, we'll upload the presentations and videos from the day to the green room, as we'll share notes from the session, and also quite a lot of actions and things that we could share with you and remind you of all the good stuff that we've got, good practice guides and hints and tips. So we'll follow up with all of that. We couldn't fit everything we wanted to cover in one day, and so we're going to be holding another webinar on the 24th of November, where ERS, our evaluators, will be giving an update on the evaluation and the latest on our 3 thematic studies. So more details will follow soon for dates and for times and how to join up. And that is everything from me. Thanks again for joining us, making this event such a success, and joining in and interacting with all the questions. Have a lovely rest of the day. And you don't need even to travel anywhere home. You don't even have to have a safe journey. So go and have a cuppa.
Thank you.
Thanks, everyone. Bye.
Thank you.